Welcome to the world of Carry On. In this series, we're going to take a look behind the scenes at how some of the greatest Carry On films were ever made. In this edition, we look back at the penultimate film of the original series, Carry On England. But just who was going to help us win this war? Kenneth Connor as Captain S. Melly. Winter Davis as Sergeant Major Tiger Bloomer. Patrick Mower as Sergeant Len Abel. Judy Geeson as Sergeant Tilly Willing. Jack Douglas as Bombardier Reddy. Peter Jones as Brigadier. Mervyn Hayes as Gunner Shorthouse. Joan Sims as Private Jennifer Fuchs Sharp. And Peter Butterworth as Major Carstairs. Carry On England was the 28th Carry On film in the long-running series. It was also a film that saw some new faces, and a lot of the old hands wasn't available for filming. Kenneth Williams was due to play the Brigadier. He was unavailable due to a stage play, Signed and Sill. And Barbara Windsor also was going to play the part of Private Easy. However, she was appearing on the Mike Reid show and was preparing for that. Sadly though, tragedy hit the Carry On team on the 26th of April 1976. Carry On legend Sid James had passed away at the age of 62, suffering a heart attack on the opening night of the play The Mating Game at the Sunderland Empire Theatre. Any chance of reviving the Carry On magic was well and truly gone now. It was also the first Carry On film to gain an AA certificate by the BBFC, which would have restricted any younger audiences which the films had previously attracted. So a few changes had to be made to the film, such as cutting out the topless nudity and the Fucker joke. This then got it back down to an A certificate, and many cinemas started showing this version, and for many years people believed that this was the version. For many TV outings and for VHS releases, this was the known version. Until the DVDs come along, then things changed when we got the director's cut, where it was all reinstated. However, that aside, it was still a commercial failure, and some cinemas withdrew it just after 3 days. Even though the name Carry On England was registered back in the early 60s, it took 16 years almost for it to come onto film. February 76 though saw producer Peter Rogers wishing to make 2 films, both set around the war. One would be a Carry On and one wouldn't be. The second would be of that, Carry On escaping an unused prisoner of war camp effort from writer Talbot Rothwell. However, Carry On England was pitched to the Rank organisation to star Windsor Davis, Kenneth Connor, Jack Douglas, Bernard Bresslaw, James Bolam, Kenneth Williams, Ian Lavender, Joan Sims, Penelope Keith, Adrian Poster, Anne Ashton and Carol Hawkins. With a cast like that, what could go wrong? Whilst many of these actors never appeared in the actual film, and only a few of the roles went to other people, such as Joan Sims for Penelope Keith and Peter Jones from Kenneth Williams and Bernard Bresslaw, who didn't even star, some new blood were about to come into the Carry On films, such as Patrick Mower and Judy Geeson, who would really be the mainstay of this film, and in their only Carry On appearance. Rank was happy to support both films but decided just to do the one, and Rank were also prepared to provide half the budget for Carry On England due to the low decline of cinema outings. However, the rest of the money would have had to come from a private sponsor, so Gerald Thomas finally got an agreement from the rock group Pink Floyd at the end of March 76. In the end, the producer Peter Rogers and Gerald Thomas, the director, fronted the money. And let's not forget the main star of the show, the anti-aircraft gun that was lent by the Imperial War Museum. It enjoyed a 24-hour security watch in Pinewood Studios and was insured just for £5,000. Peter Rogers went on to say, "No one in the studios has got a bigger gun at the moment, not even James Bond." Roger Moore was currently filming The Spy Who Loves Me at the time. So, let's take a look at what Carry On England was all about. During the darkest days of the war, Captain S. Melly is put in charge of an experimental anti-aircraft battery, along with the bellowing, ball-squeezing Sergeant Major Tiger Bloomer. But Melly discovers that the experiment is half men and half women. However, discipline is at its all-time low. Most of the battery prefers to spend the war in each other's beds rather than actually fighting. Melly shakes up the battery though with a fake air raid and is furious when instead of loading the gun they dive for cover in a private bunker called the Snoggery. Even worse, the anti-aircraft gun is actually made out of wood, as real guns are hard to come by. But determined to get the battery up to standard, Melly and Tiger put the men and women through vigorous retraining, violent exercises and 12-mile route marches. In response, Ready, Willing and Able sabotages Melly's uniform, leaving him red-faced and bare-cheeked. The whole battery is confined to a camp as punishment, and Melly decides to separate the men from the women with barbed wire surrounding their sleeping quarters. However, this doesn't stop them. They build a tunnel of love, where they can access each other's huts. Unfortunately, the very next day, Melly decides to bring in a real anti-aircraft gun, which drives straight over the hole that they've been digging the night before, and the gun sinks into the mud. When finally a real air raid actually happens, they do their best to try and defend England, successfully shooting down the enemy planes, and with only one casualty being that of the sprained fingers of Captain Melly, it goes on to inspire one of the most famous symbols of victory for the entire war. Carry On England was filmed between the 3rd of May and the 4th of June 1976 in the orchard that was used for Carry On Camping and Carry On Behind in the backlot of Pinewood Studios. It was subsequently released on the 31st of October of 76. So what do we think of Carry On England? Well, let's be honest, it's not a great film. In fact, yes, it has its moments, and there are some very good moments, but there also are some very, very bad moments. Now let's not forget, the downfall of the series started in 73 with Carry On Girls and slowly, gradually got worse and worse. Carry On Behind was probably where the cracks were really starting to show, and by this time the cracks were now open fully by Carry On England, and now we were really starting to see some unusual Carry On behaviour. They've started to go down a real bad route. They were going down this bawdy sexual comedy route, which no one really liked. It wasn't what we remember. It's not what we remember Carry On films for. Even so, they got a AA certificate because it was borderline. This was really a turning point for the Carry On team, and by this time it was either stop or carry on. Unfortunately, when they did carry on, it got even worse, and we'll talk about that in the next edition. However, Carry On England isn't really a memorable Carry On film. Apart from a couple of scenes, say the route march where he loses his clothes and maybe where they're digging the tunnel and Max Harris's wonderful signature tune, it really doesn't hold up as being quite memorable. In fact, a lot of it is forgettable, and a lot of us want to forget it. But why? Is it the lack of real stars in the film? Is it the lack of maybe not enough regulars? Well, maybe it was the newcomers. Maybe they weren't good enough. Whatever happens, Carry On England will not go down as a classic Carry On film. In fact, it probably won't even be in most people's top 20, let alone top 25. But there we go. That's Carry On England. And until next time, carry on.